The morning crowds at Zenith Station moved like a living tide, and Nira felt herself drowning in the sea of towering bodies. At barely 3.5 feet tall, the young Solari scientist pressed her back against the cold metal wall, watching the various alien species rush past her, toward their transports. Her pale violet skin marked her as different. But it was her size that made her invisible. "Watch where you're going." "Child," rumbled a massive Korvaxi businessman, his forearms laden with briefcases as he knocked into her shoulder. The impact sent Nira stumbling sideways, her research tablet clattering across the platform floor. "I'm 24 years old," she whispered to his retreating form, but her voice was lost in the station's chaos. She knelt to gather the scattered data chips from her tablet, trying to ignore the boots and claws that stepped carelessly around her. Working at the Galactic Research Consortium had been her dream since childhood, but 3 months into the position, Nira wondered if she'd made a terrible mistake. Every day brought the same humiliations, the same assumptions. Too small to reach the upper laboratory shelves. Too young-looking to be taken seriously in meetings. Too quiet to command respect from colleagues who towered. Over her, the announcement echoed through the station in multiple languages. Transport 7 for Alpha, now boarding for Research District. Final boarding call. Panic seized Nira's chest. That was her transport, and it was already pulling away from the platform. She scrambled to her feet, clutching her tablet and the precious research data it contained. Missing this transport meant being late for her presentation to the consortium board. The same presentation that could determine whether she kept her position. "Wait," she called out, breaking into a desperate run. Her short legs pumped frantically as she dodged between commuters. "Please stop." The massive transport vehicle continued its departure sequence, its engines humming with increasing intensity. Nira felt tears of frustration building in her large, amber eyes. This was it. Her career would end because she couldn't even catch a simple transport. "Stop," she said again, but this time something strange happened. The words seemed to carry an unusual weight, resonating through the air with an energy she didn't understand. The transport's engine suddenly cut out completely. The vehicle settled back onto the platform with a gentle thud. Nira skidded to a halt, confused and slightly dizzy. Had she done that? It seemed impossible. Her people, the Sellar, were known for their analytical minds and delicate constitution, not for any special abilities. The transport's doors hissed open, and a figure stepped out that made Nira's breath catch. Unlike the diverse alien species she encountered daily, this was unmistakably human, a rarity in this sector of the galaxy. He stood nearly twice her height, with broad shoulders filling his dark blue driver's uniform. His brown hair was slightly tousled, and his green eyes held an intelligence that immediately put her at ease. "Did you just do something to my transport?" he asked, his voice carrying a warm accent she'd never heard before. He studied her with genuine curiosity rather than the dismissal she'd grown accustomed to. "I don't know what you mean," Nira replied honestly, still catching her breath from her sprint across the platform. The human extended a calloused hand. "I'm Marcus Chen, and I've been driving public transport for 5 years. Engines don't just shut down like that without a very good reason." His smile was kind but puzzled. "You'd better get on board. But I think we should talk." As Nira climbed the steps into the transport, she noticed several passengers giving her strange looks. A draconian in a government uniform was speaking quietly into a communication device, his reptilian eyes fixed on her with obvious interest. Throughout the journey to the research district, Nira found herself stealing glances at Marcus and the driver's reflection. There was something steadying about his presence, a confidence that seemed effortless. When other passengers made snide comments about bringing children to work, she noticed his jaw tighten in disapproval. "Research District. Final stop," Marcus announced as the transport settled onto the platform. As passengers disembarked, he called out, "Miss, you dropped this." Confused, Nira approached the front of the transport. She definitely hadn't dropped anything. Marcus pressed a small piece of paper into her palm, his fingers warm against her skin. "My shift ends at 1800, he said quietly. "Calf Luna, level 7. If you want to understand what happened back there," his voice dropped to a whisper, "and be careful who you talk to today." That draconian was very interested in you. As Nira stepped off the transport, she unfolded the note with trembling fingers. They're watching you now. What you did isn't supposed to be possible. Trust carefully. The transport pulled away, leaving Nira standing alone on the platform with a dozen questions and a growing sense that her carefully ordered world was about to change forever. She looked down at the note again, then at the research facility looming before her. For the first time in months, she felt like someone had actually seen her, not just looked through her, but as she walked toward the building. She couldn't shake the feeling that unseen eyes were tracking her every movement. The chase begins. The presentation had been a disaster. Nira stood in the empty conference room, staring at her research tablet's cracked screen. The consortium board had barely listened to her. Findings about quantum biological interfaces before dismissing her with vague promises to consider her proposal. New dismissal when she heard it. What made everything worse was the security guard who had stationed himself outside the conference room. He'd followed her to 3 different laboratories throughout the day, always maintaining distance, but never quite out of sight. The note from Marcus echoed in her mind. They're watching you now. As Nira packed her research materials, her supervisor, Dr. Corvin, approached with an expression of false sympathy. The elderly Altarian's crystalline features reflected the lab's harsh lighting as he spoke. Nira, I'm afraid the board has some concerns about your recent work. They'd like you to undergo a routine evaluation with our security department. His tone was gentle, but his words sent ice through her veins. What kind of evaluation? She asked, clutching her tablet closer. Nothing serious. Just some standard tests to ensure you're not experiencing any unusual stress reactions. The pressure of working at the consortium can sometimes trigger unexpected responses in different species. Nira's amber eyes widened. They knew. Somehow they knew about what happened at the transport station. I need to finish cataloging today's experiments first, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. Of course. Take your time. Security will be here whenever you're ready. Dr. Corvin's smile didn't reach his eyes as he left the laboratory. The moment he was gone, Nira activated her tablet and began transferring her research data to an encrypted drive. Whatever was happening, she wasn't about to lose 3 months of work. As she worked, she noticed the security guard through the lab's window, speaking urgently into his communication device. Her hands shook as she completed the transfer. She had maybe 10 minutes before they came for her. The laboratory had several exits, but she'd need to reach the service tunnels to have any real chance of escape. Nira slipped out through the emergency exit, her small size allowing her to move through the maintenance corridors unnoticed. The tunnels beneath the research district were a maze of conduits and service passages that most people ignored. Her Solari heritage included an excellent sense of direction, a trait that served her well now. She emerged from the tunnels 3 blocks from the laboratory. In the crowded marketplace of the entertainment district, the afternoon crowds provided perfect cover as she made her way toward level 7 and Caf Luna. But as she climbed the stairs to the cafe level, Nira heard the unmistakable sound of heavy boots behind her. 2 security officers were following, trying to look casual, but clearly tracking her movement through the crowd. Panic drove her forward. She burst through the cafe doors, scanning frantically for Marcus. He sat at a corner table, already standing as he spotted her distressed expression. They're following me, she gasped, rushing to his side. Marcus didn't hesitate. He threw some credits on the table and took her hand. Back exit. Now. They moved quickly through the cafe's kitchen, Marcus apologizing to startled staff as they passed. Outside, he led her through a series of narrow alleys that seemed to twist and branch in impossible directions. How do you know these passages? Nira asked, struggling to keep pace with his longer stride. Human embassy staff get a very thorough tour of the city, Marcus replied, pulling her around a corner just as shouts echoed from behind them, including all the places they don't want us to know about. They emerged onto a transport platform just as a cargo hauler was preparing to depart. Marcus spoke quickly to the Vulcan driver in a language Nira didn't recognize, pressing a handful of credits into the alien's massive hand. Get in, Marcus urged, helping her climb into the transport's cargo hold as the hauler lifted off. Carrying them away from the city center, Nira finally allowed herself to breathe. In the dim cargo hold, she found herself pressed close to Marcus, acutely aware of his warmth and the steady rhythm of his breathing. "Thank you," she whispered. "But I don't understand why you're helping me. You barely know me." Marcus looked down at her, his green eyes serious in the half-light. "Because what you did this morning, stopping that transport with just your voice, that's something the Confederation has been trying to create artificially for decades. They call it techno-empathy, the ability to interface directly with technology through mental commands." "That's impossible," Nira protested. "My people don't have any special abilities. We're scientists and researchers, not whatever this is supposed to be." "Maybe not officially," Marcus said softly. "But humans have been observing the Confederation for a long time. We know they've been conducting experiments, trying to develop exactly this kind of capability." He reached out, gently touching her hand. "You're special, Nira, and that makes you dangerous to them." The casual contact sent an unexpected warmth through Nira's body. She'd never been this close to a human before. There was something about Marcus that made her feel both protected and strangely excited. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Somewhere safe while we figure this out," Marcus replied. "The Emerald Wilds. It's a nature preserve outside the city limits. The Confederation doesn't patrol there regularly. The transport carried them toward the unknown." Nira felt her world shifting around her. Everything she'd believed about herself, about her place in the galaxy, was changing. But with Marcus beside her, she felt ready to face whatever came next. The cargo holds shuddered as they left the city behind. And through a small window, Nira watched the gleaming spires of Nexus Prime fade into the distance. Forest Sanctuary, the cargo hauler, set them down at the edge of a vast wilderness that seemed to glow with an inner light. Ancient trees stretched toward the purple sky, their leaves shimmering with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed like a slow heartbeat. The Emerald Wilds lived up to their name, bathed in an ethereal green radiance that made everything feel dreamlike. "It's beautiful," Nira breathed, stepping out of the transport onto soft, mossy ground. She'd never been outside a city before, and the sheer scale of the natural world was overwhelming. Marcus shouldered a survival pack he'd retrieved from the hauler's emergency supplies. "My species evolved in places like this," he said, leading her along what appeared to be an animal trail. "Before we reached the stars, we were forest dwellers. Something in my DNA still remembers how to survive here." They walked for hours as the daylight faded, Marcus navigating by instincts that seemed almost supernatural to Nira. When she stumbled over a root, he caught her easily, his strong arms wrapping around her waist to steady her. "Sorry," she murmured, acutely aware of how small she felt against his chest. "Solari aren't exactly built for wilderness survival." Marcus smiled down at her. "You're tougher than you think. You escaped from Confederation security and crossed half the city to find me. That's not something a weak person does." The admiration in his voice made Nira's violet cheeks flush deeper purple. Among her own people, she'd always been considered fragile, someone to be protected rather than admired. Marcus made her feel capable, strong in ways she'd never experienced. As night fell, they found shelter in a natural grove where fallen trees had created a protected space. Marcus activated a small thermal generator from his pack, filling their sanctuary with warm, gentle light. "Tell me about Earth," Nira said, as they shared a simple meal from his emergency rations. "What was it like before humans joined the Confederation?" Marcus leaned back against a log, his eyes distant. "Wild, dangerous, beautiful. We had hundreds of different cultures, thousands of languages. We fought each other constantly, but we also created incredible art, music, stories." Looked at her seriously. "The Confederation wants us to forget all that. They say diversity leads to chaos, that unity requires conformity. But you don't believe that," Nira observed. "I believe diversity makes us stronger," Marcus replied. "Your people's analytical minds, my species' adaptability, the Voltan's strength, the Altarian's memory. Together, we could build something amazing. Instead, the Confederation wants everyone to fit the same mold." Nira moved closer to the thermal generator and found herself sitting beside Marcus, their shoulders touching. Is that why you help refugees? To preserve diversity? Partly, Marcus admitted, but mostly because it's the right thing to do. When someone is being hunted for being different, humans tend to take that personally. The night air grew cooler, and without thinking, Marcus wrapped his arm around Nira's shoulders. She tensed for a moment, then relaxed into his warmth. His body heat was intoxicating, and she found herself studying the strong line of his jaw, the way his pulse beat steadily in his throat. Nira, Marcus said softly, "There's something else you should know about why the Confederation wants you." He turned to face her, his green eyes serious. Techno-empathy isn't just about controlling machines. In the right hands, it could revolutionize how we interact with technology, how we explore space, even how we communicate across species barriers. "You're saying I could change things?" Nira whispered. "I'm saying you already are," Marcus replied, his hand coming up to cup her cheek. "The question is whether you'll let fear hold you back or embrace what you're becoming." The gentle touch sent electricity through Nira's nervous system. She'd never been touched so tenderly before, and the sensation made her breath catch. Without thinking, she leaned into his hand, her amber eyes fluttering closed. "Marcus," she breathed, and then his lips were on hers. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, as if he was afraid she might break. But Nira surprised herself by pressing closer, her hands fisting in his shirt as she kissed him back with a hunger she didn't know she possessed. His arms tightened around her, lifting her easily onto his lap. "Is this what humans call chemistry?" she whispered against his mouth. Marcus chuckled, his breath warm against her skin. Among other things, his hands traced the delicate patterns of bioluminescence that appeared on her skin when she was emotional. A ciliary trait he found endlessly fascinating. They spent the night wrapped in each other's warmth, sharing stories and gentle touches. Marcus told her about Earth's oceans and mountains, while Nira described the crystalline cities of her homeworld. They were two different species from opposite ends of the galaxy, but in the glowing forest, none of that mattered. Dawn brought a harsh reminder of reality. Distant engine sounds echoed through the trees, growing steadily closer. Marcus was instantly alert, helping Nira gather their few possessions. "Hunter drones," he said grimly. "They must have tracked the cargo hauler's registration." Nira closed her eyes, extending her senses outward. To her surprise, she could feel the mechanical signatures of the approaching drones like bright spots in her awareness. "3 of them," she said. "Maybe a quarter-mile north. Can you stop them?" Marcus asked. Nira focused on the nearest drone, feeling its electronic systems respond to her will. "Return to base," she commanded silently. "Report malfunction." One by one, the mechanical signatures vanished from her perception as the drones turned away. But the effort left her dizzy and drained. "We need to keep moving," Marcus said, supporting her as they left their sanctuary. "If they're using drones, ground teams won't be far behind." As they disappeared deeper into the Emerald Wilds, Nira realized that her old life was gone forever. But walking hand in hand with Marcus through the glowing forest, she found she didn't mind as much as she'd expected. The research station by midday, they discovered the research facility. Hidden beneath a canopy of ancient trees, the structure looked abandoned, its metal surfaces covered with luminescent vines that pulsed in slow, hypnotic patterns. Emergency power cells still functioned, casting pale blue light through dusty windows. "Look at this," Nira called from the entrance terminal. "Solari Human Cooperative Research Initiative, Project Genesis." She turned to Marcus with wide eyes. "This was a joint operation between our peoples." Marcus studied the facility's layout on an internal display. Abandoned 15 years ago, according to these records, right around the time the Confederation started restricting human-alien cooperation. Inside, they found laboratories that told a story of interrupted research. Equipment sat covered in protective sheets, and data terminals waited in standby mode for researchers who would never return. Nira approached one of the main computers, and it activated at her touch, recognizing some dormant genetic signature. "The files are still here," she whispered, scrolling through classified documents. "Marcus, they were studying psychic abilities. Not just in Solari, but in humans too." Marcus read over her shoulder, his expression growing more serious with each revelation. Electrokinesis. The ability to manipulate electrical fields with the mind. He looked at her strangely. According to this, some humans had that ability centuries ago on Earth. The Confederation suppressed the research. Nira continued reading. They claimed it was too dangerous, but look at this. She pulled up a genetic analysis chart. They were mapping psychic genes across multiple species, trying to understand how to enhance or eliminate the traits. The data painted a disturbing picture. The Confederation hadn't just ended the research. They had actively worked to breed psychic abilities out of the population. Humans with electrokinetic potential were sterilized or relocated to isolated colonies. Solari with enhanced analytical abilities were assigned to positions where their talents could be monitored and controlled. There's more, Nira said, her voice trembling as she accessed another file. They took genetic samples from the last known human electrokinetics and attempted to splice them with celery DNA. The project was called the Hybrid Initiative. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. Nira, when were you born? 24 standard cycles ago, she replied, not looking away from the screen. Why? This facility was shut down 25 years ago, but according to these records, they had one successful hybrid embryo. Marcus turned her chair to face him. Where was your mother working when she became pregnant with you? Nira's amber eyes widened in realization. She was a research assistant here. She always said she met my father during the final months of a major project, but she never talked about what they were working on. The implications were staggering. Nira wasn't just a Solari with unusual abilities. She was the product of deliberate genetic engineering. A fusion of human psychic potential with Solari neural enhancement. The Confederation hadn't just discovered her talents by accident. They had been monitoring her since birth, waiting to see what she would become. That's why they want me so badly, she whispered. I'm proof that their experiments worked. They need my genetic material to create others like me. Marcus pulled her into his arms, feeling her tremble against his chest. They'll never get the chance. I promise you that. Their moment of connection was interrupted by a proximity alarm from the facility's security system. On the external cameras, they could see a small group approaching through the forest. But these weren't Confederation forces, they were clearly refugees. Moving with the desperate caution of people fleeing persecution. We should help them, Marcus said without hesitation. Recognizing the signs of flight and fear, Nira nodded. Using her abilities to open the facility's main doors, 5 beings entered, a wounded Trill with translator implants, a fierce-looking Corvaxi female carrying a child, an elderly Altarian whose crystalline body showed stress fractures, and 2 young Voltans who looked like siblings. We seek only shelter, the Trill said in halting Galactic standard. Our ship was destroyed. We saw lights. Marcus introduced himself as human diplomatic personnel, while Nira identified herself as a research scientist. The refugees relaxed slightly, recognizing the traditional sanctuary rights that both humans and scientists were supposed to provide as they settled the group with food and medical supplies. The Trill, who introduced himself as Pix, shared disturbing intelligence. The Confederation is mobilizing entire fleets, he said. Not for war, but for collection operations. They seek beings with special abilities across multiple sectors. How many? Marcus asked. Hundreds. Maybe thousands. Pix's translation implants crackled with static as his distress affected their function. They have built processing centers, genetic extraction facilities. Nira felt sick. They're not just hunting me. They're trying to harvest psychic abilities from any species that has them. The Corvaxi female Zara set down her child and spoke in her people's growling language. Pix translated. She says her mate was taken 3 cycles ago. He could interface with starship navigation computers using only his thoughts. She has been running ever since. As the refugees shared their stories, a pattern emerged. Each had abilities that seemed minor, almost incidental: enhanced memory, technological intuition, minor telepathy. But together, their genetic material could provide the Confederation with everything needed to create an army of psychically enhanced soldiers. We can't stay here, Marcus said as evening approached. If they're conducting sector-wide operations, they'll eventually scan every abandoned facility. Where can we go? Asked the elderly Altarian. The human embassy is 3 days' travel, and we have wounded among us. Nira stood up suddenly, her eyes bright with determination. We don't run. We fight back. Marcus looked at her with surprise. Nira, there are only 7 of us against the entire Confederation. No, she said, moving to the research computers. There are thousands of us. All the people they've been hunting, all the families they've broken apart. We just need to find them and coordinate. Her fingers flew across the interface as she accessed communication arrays throughout the facility. This station still has connections to the old research network. If I can amplify my abilities through the equipment here, I might be able to reach every psychically gifted being in this sector. Marcus watched her work with growing admiration and concern. That kind of signal will draw every Confederation ship in the region straight to us. Nira looked up at him, her amber eyes blazing with fierce resolve. Then we'd better make sure we're ready for them. As night fell over the Emerald Wilds, the abandoned research station hummed with renewed purpose. But approaching through the darkness, Commander Drax's cybernetic forces were already closing in. Standing together, the communication array crackled to life as Nira channeled her abilities through the research station's amplification systems. Her consciousness expanded across the sector, reaching out to every psychically gifted being within range. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Hundreds of voices answering her call, refugees and prisoners. Hidden talents and suppressed abilities, all coming together in a network of shared purpose. They're coming, Marcus reported from the security monitors. 3 assault ships, cybernetic ground forces, and something big. On the screen, Commander Drax's massive form was unmistakable. Half draconian, half machine. The cyborg commander stood nearly 9 feet tall with cybernetic armor that pulsed with its own energy field. His mechanical enhancements were specifically designed to resist psychic influence, making him the perfect weapon against beings like Nira. How long do we have? Nira asked, maintaining her connection to the psychic network while the refugees prepared their defenses. 20 minutes, Marcus replied, checking his weapons. Maybe less. Through her expanded consciousness, Nira could sense other ships converging on their position, not Confederation vessels, but refugee craft responding to her call. Beings with abilities they'd hidden for years were finally ready to fight back. Zara's people have warrior traditions, Nira said, information flowing through the psychic link. The Trill colonies have defensive technologies. Even the Altarian memory keepers have tactical knowledge we can use. Marcus coordinated the defense with military precision, while Nira served as the communication hub for their growing alliance. The elderly Altarian, despite his frail appearance, revealed strategic insights gleaned from centuries of observing Confederation tactics. The young Voltons used their natural strength to position defensive barriers, while Pix coordinated with incoming refugee ships through his translation implants. The first assault came at dawn. Confederation forces surrounded the facility, but they faced something unexpected, a coordinated resistance network that anticipated their every move. When cybernetic soldiers tried to breach the perimeter, they found their systems randomly failing as dozens of psychic minds worked in concert to disrupt their technology. Impossible, Commander Drax's mechanical voice boomed across communication channels. Psychic abilities cannot be coordinated on this scale. Apparently no one told them that, Marcus said grimly. Watching refugee ships engage Confederation forces in aerial combat overhead, but Drax was adapting. His cybernetic forces began using purely mechanical weapons, devices with no electronic components for psychic abilities to target. Slowly, they pushed closer to the research station. I have to face him directly, Nira realized. His cybernetic shielding is blocking our network's ability to affect his forces. Absolutely not, Marcus said immediately. That thing was designed specifically to kill people like you. People like me were designed to be free, Nira replied, standing up from the communication console. All of us. Psychic network pulsed with agreement. Across the sector, beings who had spent their lives in hiding were choosing to stand and fight. But they needed someone to break through Drax's defenses first. Marcus took her hands, his green eyes intense with emotion. If we're doing this, We do it together. Together. Nira agreed, and kissed him fiercely. They emerged from the research station to find the battlefield transformed. What had started as a hunt for one fugitive had become a sector-wide uprising. Confederation forces were vastly outnumbered by the diverse alliance that had responded to Nira's call. Commander Drax stood in the clearing before the facility, his cybernetic form radiating menace. "Surrender the hybrid, and the rest may return to their assigned sectors," he announced. "Counteroffer," Marcus called out, stepping forward with Nira beside him. "Withdraw your forces, and we might let you keep your mechanical parts." Drax's laugh was like grinding metal. "Humans, your arrogance will be your extinction." The cyborg commander moved with inhuman speed, but Marcus was ready. His training with human special forces had prepared him for opponents with enhanced abilities. He rolled aside from Drax's first attack, drawing the creature away from Nira, while Marcus engaged the commander in physical combat. Nira reached out with her abilities, trying to find some weakness in his cybernetic systems. His defenses were incredibly sophisticated, but they were still technology, still subject to the laws of physics that governed electronic fields. "Your hybrid cannot affect me," Drax taunted, backhanding Marcus across the clearing. "My systems are completely isolated from external influence." "Maybe," Nira said, closing her eyes and extending her consciousness into the psychic network. "But you're not isolated from physics." Instead of targeting Drax's cybernetic systems directly, she reached out to every piece of technology in the immediate area: the research station's power grid, the Confederation ship's engines, even the electronic components and fallen weapons. She didn't try to control them. She simply asked them to share their energy. The effect was spectacular. Every electronic device for miles began channeling power toward Drax's location, creating an electromagnetic field so intense that even his shielded systems couldn't compensate. His cybernetic implants sparked and smoked as they overloaded. "Impossible," Drax roared, his mechanical voice distorting as his systems failed. "Improbable," Nira corrected. "There's a difference." Marcus didn't waste the opportunity. A precisely aimed shot from his pulse weapon sent the disabled cyborg crashing to the ground around the battlefield. Confederation forces found themselves facing an impossible situation. Their technological advantages were useless against opponents who could turn their own equipment against them. One by one, they began surrendering. In the aftermath, as refugee ships landed to collect their people and tend their wounded, Nira stood with Marcus watching the sunrise over the Emerald Wilds. The psychic network still hummed in her mind, connecting her to hundreds of beings across the sector who were no longer hiding their abilities. "What happens now?" Marcus asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Now we build something new," Nira replied, leaning back against his solid warmth. "A confederation based on cooperation instead of control. Diversity instead of conformity. Think they'll let a human bus driver help with that?" Nira turned in his arms, her amber eyes sparkling with mischief. "I think they'll let a human special operative help. And his partner." "Partners," Marcus agreed, sealing the promise with a kiss as the liberated ships of a dozen species rose into the morning sky around them. The smallest voice in the galaxy had become the loudest, and the Confederation would never be the same.